So today we have some awesome Skinwalker stories. Whoa! Before we get to the stories, I have two things I want to mention very quickly. First of all, thanks to all of you who helped us reach 1,000 subscribers. Awesome in just over 2 months. More than I could have imagined. Thank you so much. It has been so much fun doing this channel, and you guys are the ones helping me make it grow. Secondly, my family and I just got back from a few days in South Dakota. The Badlands, the Black Forest, it was just amazing. And while we were there, we picked up this guy. Isn't he awesome? I love him. And he's going to be a permanent addition to the InBetween office. But I need help in naming him. So if you guys can think of a good name for him, please leave it in the comments below. All right, on to today's stories. Lee is half Hopi and half Navajo, and he's had his share of experiences both on and off the reservation. One summer in the mid-90s, when Lee was 14, he spent the summer at his grandma's house on the Navajo reservation, just kind of helping her around the house. He loved to spend time with his grandma, eat her fried bread, hers was the best, and hear her tell stories that scared the crap out of him. True stories about ghosts and black magic and skinwalkers. And she told him stories about his father and his grandfather and their run-ins with skinwalkers. Now, every now and then, his grandma would hire Ernie, who was a local guy who would come out and kind of help her with things that she needed done around the property. And one late evening, his grandma asked Lee to take Ernie home. Ernie lived in a house about 4 miles away from where his grandma lived in the valley. And Lee was more than happy to comply because he was only 14 and this meant he got to drive the truck. Now keep in mind that on the res, nobody cares that you're 14 and driving around. Hell, there's nobody around to see you doing it anyway. And Lee had driven plenty of times before, so he had plenty of experience. But he was always happy to pick up more. So his 9-year-old brother jumps in the cab of the truck with him, and Ernie and Lee's dog jump in the tailgate of the truck, and they are off. And after Lee drops Ernie off in the shack that he and his brothers call a house, he and his brother turn around and head back down the road back to Grandma's. And the sky is a deep red as the sun is starting to set behind them. And the radio is playing music from the only station that they can pick up, broadcasting out of Holbrook, Arizona. And there's nothing weird, nothing unusual. Lee and his brother are just soaking in the perfect summer evening. And after driving for a bit, something kind of catches Lee's attention off the side of the road to the right. And Lee slows down, thinking that it's one of the many free-roaming sheep in the area that have a really bad habit of jumping out in front of vehicles. So he slows down until he passes where he thinks that he saw it, and then he starts to speed up again, thinking nothing else of it. Suddenly, he feels this dark feeling of fear and dread, and he doesn't know where it's coming from, but he just knows something is very wrong. And Lee looks in his rearview mirror and sees the silhouette of something that he thinks was the sheep that he just passed. But the sheep starts growing, unfurling, expanding, stretching until it becomes something else. Something that's very tall and skinny with long arms and long legs that seem to be covered in some kind of fur. And whatever it is, it starts running at the truck. And Lee knows it's not a normal human or any kind of human at all. And he hears his brother start crying in the truck next to him. And his dog is in the bed of the truck barking ferociously at whatever this thing is. And this thing is chasing them and gaining ground even though Lee's doing about 30 miles an hour at this point. So he speeds up. And he and his brother and the dog are all shaking violently as the truck is going over this washboard gravel road. And the sound of the rattling truck hitting the rutted road is almost deafening as he pushes the truck faster, upwards of 65 miles an hour. But this thing is only getting closer, and Lee is struggling to keep control of the truck as it is fishtailing from one side of the dirt road to the other. And his brother screams, "It's coming up on your side!" And Lee is as scared as hell as a million thoughts are going through his brain. Is this real? Is this thing gonna kill us? What is happening? And at the moment he thinks is going to be their last, the truck careens around a bend in the road where they come upon a car coming in the opposite direction. And as the two cars pass one another, Lee feels instant relief wash over him. Whatever was following them is gone. He doesn't know if it decided to hide because of the other car or if it decided to go chase the other car. And he doesn't care. All he knows is that he can feel that it's gone and he can breathe again. Shaken up, but still alive, they make it back to Grandma's house wondering what the hell just happened. And as soon as the truck stops, the boys jump out, slam the doors, run inside the house, not looking back, hoping that whatever it was that was chasing them didn't follow them home. They slam the front door shut, lock it, close the windows, and stand there catching their breath. And Grandma sees that they're shaking and asks what happened. So Lee tells Grandma they were just chased by something at 65 miles an hour. And Grandma's response, "Yeah, things like that happen around here." Lee and his brother look at each other in a shared revelation that all of those stories that they have been told by Grandma since they were babies are true. Stories about black magic and witches and skinwalkers. They're real. Needless to say, the experience changed Lee's life. He no longer wanted to be out after dark or sleep out in Grandma's backyard and watch the stars. As a matter of fact, he never drove at night on that reservation again until he was 21 years old. Lee says he believes skinwalkers are evil men and spirits that use black magic for evil doing. And as far-fetched as it may sound, they are real. And he believes that if God and his greatness are real, then the devil is real as well. And like God, has ways of showing himself. But what happened that evening really did happen. And it scared the crap out of him. And Lee invites anybody to visit his part of Arizona if you have any doubts. He promises you won't be disappointed. The writer of this story goes by the initials DN, so we are going to call her Dina. And one Friday night, Dina, her older brother, and her older sister are all driving home for the weekend. And they need to drive from Phoenix to Low Mountain, which is near Pinion, Arizona. And it's about a 5-hour drive. And unfortunately, they got a late start, so they are going to be driving well into the night. And they're taking their usual route, and they're going down Keams Canyon Highway to a dirt road that will take them right to Low Mountain. And the reservation is really dark at night, and there's almost no one driving on the roads. And so they're on the highway right before they reach that dirt road, and they see an old woman walking on the side of the road with a cane at 2 a.m. She has a scarf around her head, a long black jacket, and is wearing a green dress. And they didn't think too much about it, but they did think it was kind of weird that she was walking on the side of the highway that late. But they keep driving and eventually get to their dirt road turnoff. And about a mile from the highway, they see that same old woman walking with a cane on the side of the dirt road. And Dina, she just freaks out. She knows that is the same woman that they just saw 15 miles back. And her brother just steps on the gas and starts driving faster. And they eventually get to a highway that takes them either to Chinle, Low Mountain, or Pinion. And they pass the first bridge, and they realize the old woman is again in front of them, sitting on the highway with her head down, waving her cane in the air. Before they can pass her, the car just shuts down. And Dina's brother keeps trying to get it started, but it will not start. And the old lady stands up, facing away from them so they can't see her face, and walks to the opposite side of the road. And she turns to face them, and they can see that her face is painted all black. And she turns around and keeps walking and disappears into the darkness. And Dina's brother turns the ignition one more time, and the car starts. When they finally do get home, they tell their parents about what happened. And Dina's dad said that he knew of an old couple that lived between the highways that did bad medicine on people. And he also said that her husband passed away not long ago, and she sometimes walks that road. And when the kids did leave to go back, they ended up taking the long way. And Dina said it was very real and very scary, and she never wants to drive down that road again. From about the age of 7, Caleb would spend about a month every summer staying with his uncle in Wheatfield, which is in northeast Arizona. And he loved staying there because he and his cousin Dominic got to ride horses and play with the dogs and go fishing and go camping by the lake. And even his aunt would come over sometimes and go camping with them. And one night in the summer of 2010, when Caleb and Dominic and their aunt are all camping, their aunt says, "You know what, guys, I'm going to go into town and pick up a friend of mine and pick up some munchies for you guys." And after she leaves, the boys decide to do some fishing. They catch a trout, start a fire, and cook the fish for dinner. And as the sun starts to set, their area gets pretty quiet, and the boys are just chilling by the fire. And they usually hear howling and partying at night, but this particular night, it was just 2 campers on the west side of the lake, and one near the boys who was already asleep. And Caleb gets the feeling that something is watching them from the bushes. So he takes his flashlight and he shines it in the trees, and he sees nothing. And the coyotes start howling on the south side of the lake. And over time, the boys can hear them getting closer and closer. And Caleb starts freaking out when they hear one howl right behind them. And both boys decide, we're out. And Dominic starts putting his tackle box away. But he decides to put a big stick on top of it that would keep anything but a person out of it. And they put everything away as best that they can and hurry inside the tent. And after a little while, they can hear little footsteps behind their tent. And after about another 15 minutes, they hear something else outside their tent, like something trying to get into Dominic's tackle box. And something else was trying to get into his aunt's tent. But luckily, Caleb had tied it up with 30-pound fishing line. And then something else was trying to put out their campfire. And Caleb knows there were no people around there, or they would have heard their heavier footsteps. And both boys have the feeling that whatever it is, that there's 6 of them. Because one was trying to put out the fire, one's trying to get into their aunt's tent, one's messing with Dominic's tackle box, but they can still hear what sounds like 3 of them behind their tent. And they know it has to be skinwalkers. Because not only is the air filled with the smell of dead animals, but the boys could just feel something evil in the air. Now, Caleb and Dominic are both 14 that summer, and I personally think that the phrase "curiosity killed the cat" was coined specifically for 14-year-old boys, because they just cannot help but peek under the tent flaps to see what it is that's moving around their campsite. And what they see freaks them out, to put it mildly. They see beings with the feet of a goat and the antlers of a deer walking around their fire. And the fire is pretty big, so they had a pretty good look at these things. And Caleb's heart is pumping so hard that he can feel it sending blood to every nerve ending, and he can hear the endless thudding in his ears. And the skinwalkers keep saying their names,
Caleb, Dominic,
over and over. And the boys actually had aluminum bats with them in the tents, but they were way too scared to use them. And Caleb just keeps thinking that this is his last day in this world. And he starts praying to God that his aunt will come back soon. And he knows God answered his prayer because in less than 10 minutes, his aunt came back. And she's a little overwhelmed when both the boys come running at her from the tent, asking her over and over, "Did you see them? Did you see them?" And she told the boys that she saw a few guys around the campfire with what looked like furs on them. But as soon as her headlights hit them, they ran away. So all three of them kind of look around the campsite, and they can see that that stick that Dominic put on his tackle box is now laying off to the side. And their aunt does her best to calm the boys down and get them back to bed. But the growls they hear later that night is enough to get Dominic up and out of his tent and spreading ash in a circle around both of their tents for protection. And to this day, when Caleb and Dominic tell their story, they start shaking because they are still so scared of what happened that night. And Caleb's aunt doesn't speak of it because she believes that if she does, whatever that evil was will come back to haunt them. And Caleb knows that this story doesn't sound real to some people, but he swears it's true. He knows there are skinwalkers, and they are real. And if you don't believe him, go to the mountains near Wheatfield, Arizona, on the northeast side of Arizona or the northwest part of New Mexico, and just stay out there and wait for them to come, because he guarantees something will happen. And if you just cannot get enough creepiness, click here for more, and we will see you again on the In-Between.